wonderful program today. It's very special because we have a senator. Senator Connie Leyva is here to discuss a very important issue. Now, recently, a young lady from Drake University, a graduate from Drake University, suggested to Merriam-Webster that, and you know, she's only 22, and she wrote to Merriam-Webster, the dictionary, and suggested that they should include a reference to systemic oppression, and Merriam-Webster agreed to change it. Wow. So, you know, it's very interesting that racism can also be part of healthcare issues. Now, Senator Connie Leyva, welcome.
Thank you, Erlinda. Happy to be with you.
Thank you for being here. You're an amazing person. You do so much.
Well, I love my job, and it's an honor to serve every day and just try and make a difference. I feel very lucky.
And you do, and you definitely do. Thank you so much for everything that you've done and are continuing to do. Now, let's go a little bit to a couple of questions. Now, recently we had a tragedy. What were the first thoughts you had when you saw the video? When you saw the video of the law enforcement killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis, what were your thoughts?
Well, even before my thoughts, my reaction was I cried. It just, it was horrific to see, as many of us have seen many times. And then my first thoughts were, how many more? When does this stop? How does this continue to happen in the year 2020? So my mind was just racing, and I just thought, I just couldn't believe that it was still happening. And, you know, it just seemed that, you know, just on the coattails of Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, and now this, I just thought, when is it going to end? It's just horrific. Just horrific, but it brought me to tears. It still brings me to tears when I see it.
Right. It almost seems like it's a problem that's kind of genetic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's continual. Well, you know, 1800s, you know, the slavery issue, and it still is in some people's minds. You know, it
Yes.
really is. It really is. You recently sent out a statement using or asking the state of California to declare racism a public health crisis.
Yeah.
Why? Why did you do that?
Because racism permeates every aspect of all of our lives. But for our Black communities, it is appalling. If you look at the statistics and see that almost 40% of Black children live in poverty, compared with only 14.5% of white children, that is just an unimaginable gap. And that Blacks have the highest rate of poverty at 27%. And health, because healthcare isn't always available to everyone. And when we think of healthcare, 44% more Black people are expected to die from a stroke. 72% more Black people have diabetes. Women, 40% more likely to die from breast cancer. This just racism permeates every aspect of our life, implicit bias. So I just think that until we call it what it is, and the state declares that racism is a public health crisis, I don't think we can start making it better until we first recognize that there's a systemic problem.
Right. It seems like some changes, little changes, are beginning to happen. You know, you see even the television programs.
Yes.
Some posts are changing as well. There was a football team that actually changed their name.
Yes.
You know, so some things are changing. However, it's not enough yet.
Not enough. Erlinda, it's not enough. And my hope is that George Floyd's death was certainly not the first, but I hope it's the last. And when we saw people protesting, I come out of the labor movement. I fully believe in getting out there and peacefully marching and letting people know how important this is. And to see people all across this nation, all across the world, marching in protest, and then of course saying that Black Lives Matter, as they do, that gave me hope that even during this really tough time with COVID and with racism, I hope maybe are we finally at a point where we as a society are willing to look it in the eye and call it what it is and fix it? And I too have seen some of the things that you have seen. Some of them are small, some of them are bigger. I just hope that we keep pushing and pushing and making sure that once and for all, we end racism.
Right. Now, race, how does it affect healthcare? Racism, how does it affect healthcare? I mean, there's a lot of Medi-Cal, there's a lot of clinics. Tell me why is it that there's a difference in healthcare, and some can go and get some treatment and many others can't?
I think it's a couple things. One, when we just look at poverty, like I said, almost 50% of children live in poverty. So that means Black children. So that means mom and dad are living in poverty. And so many of us, our healthcare is attached to our job. So if you don't have a good job, you don't have access to good healthcare. You might even be paying for healthcare, but is it accessible to you and your family? When you talk about Medicare, Medi-Cal, I think that's where some implicit bias comes in. Senator Holly Mitchell last year authored a bill that Governor Brown, I think it was last year or the year before. Anyway, she authored a bill about mortality rates with Black women and in childbirth. And a lot of it was focused on implicit bias. So I think it's a combination of the healthcare is a combination of having access to the care. And then the other is if you have access to the care, sometimes those caregivers have implicit bias. They think that Black women are stronger in childbirth. They're no different from any other woman giving birth. It's hard. And so I think
it's the same.
It's the same, exactly. It's the same, it's hard. So I think those are the reasons we see so much disparity in healthcare.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, in the statement that you made, you mentioned that Black Americans are I can't say the word, disproportionately out of school, okay? Die for the coronavirus or be killed by law enforcement than the Caucasian population. Do you think this is all directed to implicit bias or racism?
I think it's both. I think that you learn what you live. And if you grow up in a household with racist parents or whoever is raising you, then you learn that. And so you learn to dislike someone because of the color of their skin and for no other reason. So I think that racism and implicit bias are tied very closely together. So if we are not getting into those living rooms and making sure that children realize that we're all the same, we all bleed the same blood, you learn what you live. And then I think society has really perpetuated the implicit bias and has really just, we don't do any kind of training on that. We don't, and people don't even think that they're racist, right? They oh no, and when people say, oh, I don't see color, well, that's probably even worse because you're not recognizing that we do have differences amongst us. We're more the same than we are different. But I think the racism and the racism starts at home. And the implicit bias, I think, is perpetuated by society.
That's true. So true. And it does start at home because you see the little ones.
Yes.
You teach them. That's what they're going to be.
Yes.
I've seen a commercial where a little white child and a little Black child just run towards each other and just hug.
I love that commercial.
Isn't it beautiful?
It's beautiful because it just shows you that children are pure and adults can either help them be good people or they create bad little people who grow into adults that are not good people.
Right, exactly. Now, as a senator, you have the power to work with other politicians to change for us. And, our health care benefits to maybe end some of the racism so we are not divided.
Yeah.
Is part of what you do?
Yes, it is part of what I do. And part of, I think, my job as an elected is to use my position and use the bully pulpit to speak out against racism, to speak out against inequities. And when we look at, as the chair of Senate Education, I think about equity in our school system, not equality in our school system, because they're two very different things. So yes, that is part of my job, is to use the bully pulpit and use my power to change things. We have recently on Team Leyva created a small task force on racism, where we've asked some prominent leaders in our communities to come together. We meet every Friday for an hour and discuss different issues. And as we hone our message, and once we're ready, we will let people know what we've been working on. But part of it is looking at legislation and finding out what the community, how they feel about it, pastors, people, former law enforcement, and how do they feel about this legislation. But those are things I can do as an elected, either author legislation, support good legislation, and also make sure that our community is involved in helping me make good decisions.
Very good. Now, there is currently a bill moving in Sacramento, and it's called AB 1460.
Yes.
What is that? What is it?
So this bill by Dr. Weber would create curriculum and make it mandatory that in order to graduate from a Cal State University or a UC university, you have to have a class on, oh shoot, it just escaped me. But what it is it's about us learning about each other and learning about differences, and that we're all different, but we're the same. And I think this bill is critically important, because if you are that person who's growing up in that house and you are taught racism and you go to college, maybe now you have an actual chance to realize, oh, what I learned was wrong, and that we're all part of the human race. And knowing about each other and knowing about our different cultures and realizing that we're all valued can make a difference. And you would think that this would be an easy bill to get across the Senate floor. I had a hard time just getting it out of Senate Education, because people members didn't think we should tell our CSUs how they should operate and what they should do. My thing was, well, if they're not doing it, then it's our job as legislators to step up and make sure they're doing the right thing.
Absolutely. It's one of the things that I wonder is, why don't they teach the Mexican history, the Black history?
Yes, everyone's history.
Schools. We are a people too. You hear about so-and-so and so-and-so, but you never hear anything about Rosa Parks.
Right.
You don't hear MLK and all these different people that have, Cesar Chavez. I asked my granddaughter, do you know who that is? And she said, who's that?
Oh, yeah.
That's why it's very important that we find a way to bring those classes into schools.
So this will be in college, but I would argue we need to start sooner. I would argue that we need to start in elementary school and junior high and high school. And we do have some bills that look to do that, but being a year of COVID, we're really trying to focus on COVID related issues. But I do see that coming in the future, and we just have to do it. If we're going to accept each other and value each other, we have to know about each other and know about different cultures.
That's right. We definitely do. Now, with the COVID issue, as far as getting treatment, are people of, here I go, people of color, are we getting the same treatment as a Caucasian person?
No, we see all the statistics that show that Black and brown people are most disadvantaged. It goes back to healthcare. It goes back to, do you have access to healthcare? Because if you do, then you can go get tested, which testing has been an issue for everyone. But healthcare is a human right. It is not a privilege. And during COVID, we just see those disparities. They're just amplified. And if people can't get tested, if we're not doing the contact tracing so that we know, okay, this person had it and who was that person around, we're never going to get a handle on this thing. And that, to me, not being able to get tested because you're Black or brown is also a racism issue.
Right, right. Is there lack of treatment centers, medical centers, so people can go to and get health care?
Yes, I think there is. I always think that access is a huge issue. And I think it's also not just access, it's difficult for people to navigate the healthcare system. And I always say, I've been lucky enough, I had a union job for 30 years. I had good healthcare. But even I had a hard time navigating the system. What if you don't speak the language? How do you navigate our healthcare system? So I think we need more healthcare providers in the Inland Empire especially. We need more primary care physicians. People just need access. I think that Obamacare went a long way in the right direction. And then unfortunately, it's being tried to be dismantled by the person in the White House now. And my hope is that when we get a new president who believes in healthcare for everyone, we can expand on Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act, whichever you want to call it, the same thing. But when you think about it, most of us, our healthcare is tied to our job. And if you lose your job, you lose your health care. With the Affordable Care Act, you purchase it on the exchange, so that way it's always with you. We can do this. We can solve this as Americans. We can make sure that everyone has access to affordable health care. I always say it's not a lack of how to, it's a lack of will to.
Right. And we also need more Blacks and Latinos as physicians.
Yes.
We really do.
People want to see someone who looks like them. And you know, if you are a Black person and everyone you see in your treatment is white, you don't feel like they really know you. Or if you're a Latina or a Latino and Spanish is your first language, wouldn't it be wonderful to see a doctor who could speak to you in your language? It's just, it's very common sense, but it goes back to not having also access to a good education or the opportunity. Just because you're poor does not mean you're not smart. It just means that you don't have the opportunities that others have had. So if we are going to bring more Blacks and Latinos into the medical professions, we have to provide them those opportunities at a very young age. And that too is a part of racism.
I'm really happy that you're active in that arena. And you know, our veterans, the mental health,
yes,
many of them are deprived of medical care.
Yes.
And a lot of our folks are homeless, you know, and they too, of course, are deprived of medical care. They don't know how to even go to the doctors.
That's right. That's right.
Fortunate, you know, that we are in that position. You know,
we have a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do.
Right, and you have a lot of work to do.
We did some studies back in a couple years ago when I was still in the Senate, but early on, and we were studying the model in Utah, which only 3% of their population is homeless. And to me, the key takeaway was in Utah, they look at their homeless as brothers and sisters. They look at that could be my dad, that could be my mom, my brother, my sister. We don't do that. And until we look at them as human beings that could be part of our family, I think it makes it very difficult to change what's happening in the home and with our homeless.
Right. Well, things have to change. And it's wonderful to hear that some of our politicians are working in that arena so that things can change so that lives can be better.
Yes.
Hey, I'm so happy that, you're part of that team.
I'm trying.
Yeah. Continue, please, to do so. I really need you to continue to do the fabulous work that you do. And here in, racism, yes, there is, gosh, disparities in many, many areas of healthcare. Sure. Hopefully in time, as our children grow, things may change. Things may definitely change. Maybe they won't see color. They'll appreciate color.
Appreciate color, exactly, and appreciate that everybody brings something different to the table, and
Yes.
that we are stronger because of our diversity, not weaker. I mean, we look at the United States of America and we're a melting pot. California is a melting pot, but unfortunately we have someone at the top leading our government in Washington that to me has stoked racism and stoked he just doesn't want people to come together. So it means those of us who do believe that have to work even harder.
Thank you very much. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I would also like to thank you, Erlinda. I think you do such a great job. You're so easy to talk to. You care so much about the community. So I appreciate you, and I just appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Well, thank you for being with us. Empowering Voices likes to have people like yourself because they need to hear, about what real people are doing.
Yes. Yes.
The constituents, and that they do matter no matter what color they are.
That's right. You can't run for office if you don't like people, because as a senator, I have the privilege of representing almost 1 million people. And that means even people that voted for me and people that didn't vote for me. It means that those are my people, and it's my job to look out for them the best I can.
That's right. And you're doing a famous job. I
feel very lucky to do it, as I said.
My regards to your team. They're all
team. I can't do it without
Michael. They're wonderful people.
They are wonderful people. Thank you for recognizing that. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you for being with us today. We really had a good time, didn't we? Empowering Voices is your television program. So remember, whenever you watch us, grab a pencil, because we always have, information that you probably may need and look into for yourself. All right. Well, thank you. And until next time, I'm Erlinda. And remember, Empowering Voices is your show. Thank you.